And basically, I wrote the book after my mother's near-death experience. And she came back from death. I saw this effect of prayer and miracle. And that kind of stimulated me that I need to give this information to people and write a complete book covering this entire field of yoga, meditation, prayer, and miracle.
Namaste. You're listening to the Savannah Podcast. Join us on an exploration of Eastern spirituality, yoga philosophy, and conscious living for the new age. This podcast is a production of SavannahSpirit.com, where you can find a large selection of Om and yoga clothing, spiritual jewelry, and unique fair trade gifts from the Far East. Now here's your host, Ashton Sabo.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Savannah Podcast. We've got a really interesting show in store for today. We're going to talk about the scientific research behind meditation, yoga, and prayer. Here to talk with us is Dr. Amitava Dasgupta. He has got a Ph.D. in chemistry from Stanford University. He completed his fellowship training in clinical chemistry from the Department of Laboratory Medicine at the University of Washington School of Medicine in Seattle. And he is board certified in both toxicology and clinical chemistry. He is currently a tenured full professor of pathology and laboratory medicine at the University of Texas Medical School. And he's published over 214 peer-reviewed papers in journals, and he's on the editorial board of 5 international journals. Now, he grew up and was born in Calcutta, India, where he learned yoga and meditation, and he's here to talk to us today about his forthcoming book, The Science of Meditation, Yoga, and Prayer. Really excited to have him on the show. Dr. Dasgupta, welcome.
Thank you so much.
So if you could, tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to your research and to eventually come out with this book.
Well, I was practicing yoga and meditation since I was 6 years old in India. So I had a guru who taught me the wonderful life of meditation and yoga. When I was young, I was more into yoga because it was a very good exercise. I had some problem growing up, which is mostly I was very susceptible to cold. So what I learned from my yoga teacher, some of the asanas are very helpful, and some of the pranayamams, which are breathing techniques, help me to prevent having cold in the winter months. And from that, I practice yoga. And then as I get older, like especially my teenager, I was more drawn into meditation. And that was mostly for calming my mind and dealing with my studies. And when I get upset, I thought it's more beneficial to practice meditation for 10 to 15 minutes with a Sanskrit chant than go and talk to my friends or play soccer or something else. So from that point of view, I came to US when I was 22, when I go to Stanford, and that was an extremely stressful time in my life. Learning new culture, don't know what to do for recreation, did not have courage to ask a girl out because I have never dated before. And when I was depressed and lost, meditation kept me alive, telling me that life has a much bigger purpose than success and failure. And one of the greatest comfort I had, my yoga and meditation teacher in India told me, as long as you try, whether you can make it or not is in the hand of God. But God doesn't judge you from your academic success or your paycheck or how beautiful your wife is or how successful your kids are. God judges you how you touch other people's life. Mm-hmm. So love is the most important thing in the world, and God is love.
I love that. So your book is really a wonderful summary of all this different medical research on yoga and meditation and prayer. But I want to start before we dive into some of the specifics and kind of get your feeling. So there are two kind of threads out there. There's the kind of neurotheology model, which kind of says that the brain generates the spiritual experience, which is kind of the more commonly accepted model. But there's also this other idea of the theoneurology model that says the brain actually acts as an agent with which the divine or God communicates. So it's more about the allowing a receptivity to instead of then a generation of. What's your own personal belief, given that you come from a heavy background with meditation and yoga, but you also have a very profound experience within rigorous scientific community and research? What's your feeling on that?
Well, the first thing is, in this book, I try to provide a balanced view. I talked about the scientific research, the theory of neurobiology. One of the things is that human can perceive God or have spirituality because of our large brain size. And most animals live with the present. I have two pet cats, and they don't think about future. They don't think about what is going to happen tomorrow, but humans do. My take is a personal take because in the scientific world, people say that human brain created God. And there is some basis on that because we do not understand why loving God caused famine, ISIS, Hitler. We don't understand that. But maybe there is a bigger purpose which I do not understand. My perception is that human brain is complicated and meditation is one of the scientific way to get connected with the divine. Because I personally believe there is a bigger power. I might call it God, I might call it Allah, I might call it Vishnu, it doesn't matter. There is a higher power which is totally beyond my comprehension, as I don't expect my cat to read New York Times in the morning. Similarly, it is probably totally beyond my comprehension and brain power to understand God, but I can still feel His presence. And that's all it matters.
Well, I love that. So your book is set up where it kind of has different sections that look at a lot of the various research that's been done specifically, and it kind of separates it from yoga and meditation and prayer. Kind of starting with yoga, what was the most interesting study that you've come across in all of your research in relation to the health benefits of yoga?
Well, one of the best benefits of yoga is that the American Heart Association clearly says that we have to do exercise, because if we do not do exercise, this is not good for the heart. So yoga is a form of exercise, but yoga is better than exercise for three reasons, what I found in my scientific research. First, exercise sometimes can be very competitive. There is a goal to achieve. Either I have a better muscle mass or I have better tolerance. Yoga doesn't have that goal. And exercise stimulates our sympathetic nervous system. And because it stimulates sympathetic nervous system, exercise increases oxidative stress, which is linked to many diseases. So although exercise is good for cardiac health, is good for our overall health, there is a negative side, which is production of free radical. For some strange reason, and it is most likely because yoga stimulates parasympathetic nervous system, yoga doesn't increase the oxidative stress. It has all the benefit of exercise, but do not have the problem of oxidative stress. And that is the most beneficial part of it. So we can replace exercise by regular yoga. And if you practice yoga for half an hour every day, that's good enough to get the need for exercise. But yoga also gives you mental peace. Yoga also is very good for stress release, which is everyday's problem. So coming home after a hard day And practicing yoga for half an hour is going to make you relax. Then you take a shower, eat, watch TV, do whatever you like. Exercise is not going to reduce your cortisol, which is a stress hormone, at the same level. So if you ask me what is the best benefit of yoga, it gives you all the benefit of exercise, but do not have any side effect, which is oxidative stress.
So stress is a big topic, especially in the modern sort of Western world, but really across the world. Anywhere it seems like everything's accelerating, and I know there's a lot of research both with meditation and yoga around that. You mentioned a specific study in your book where they measured the levels of GABA in the brain, and they noticed that after 60 minutes of a yoga practice, that those significantly increased. I believe the number is by 27%. Could you, for our listeners, briefly describe what GABA is and why this is significant?
Yes, GABA is a neurotransmitter. The reason we find joy, sadness, happiness is because we have more than 1 billion nerve cells, which is connecting with each other, making a 1 trillion connection. So human brain is more complicated than the most sophisticated computer ever created. So basically, GABA is a neurotransmitter which calms the brain. So GABA is called brain's anti-anxiolytic drug. So for example, if somebody is stressed and they take a alprazolam or diazepam for relaxation, those drugs have side effects, but since GABA is the brain's own calming agent, it do not have the side effect. So that calms us down, and this is the reason the cortisol is reduced, and reduction of cortisol is most likely due to GABA, which calms the brain down and calms the central nervous system. And this is one of the benefits of yoga, because I know personally that if I have a very rough day and I come back and I use 5 or 6 asanas, or even if I just do very simple asanas like Vajrasana, I feel relaxed, and that's because of GABA. But I can ask any runner that if they can run for half an hour, I don't think they feel that calming effect.
So, I mean, we're kind of in the realm here of, I'd say the vast majority, at least in the West, of people that are attracted to yoga are in it for the more obvious health benefits. As you mentioned, exercise, I think the number one response is actually flexibility, but stress, I think, is number 2. But I want to open up the conversation a little bit and talk about more of the neurology of the spiritual experience or the enlightenment experience. And you had referenced a really interesting work by a man named Paul Joseph talking about the enlightenment experience and something specifically calling the refeeding syndrome. Now, you were talking about the context of the story of Buddha, where the historical Gautama Buddha, where he'd been fasting for days, and being someone that has fasted many times in life, I found it really interesting to find by reading your book that fasting actually inhibits MAO activity. And that I know you go on to explain more about tryptophan and serotonin. I've done some research into DMT in the system, and we know how that works with MAO inhibition and whatnot. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the overall neurology of that spiritual experience and maybe touch on concepts like fasting and how tryptophan and serotonin work in the brain and how that's all connected.
Well, the first thing is that my mother is a devout Hindu, and my mother fasts, because there are some auspicious days when she will fast from sunrise to sunset and even don't drink water. And when she has rice pudding, that's more of a religious ceremony, she always feels the high. So what basically happening, and then in Muslim religion, you have Ramadan. And one of the things which I talk to my Muslim friends, that when they have the iftar, they eat after the whole day, they feel a spiritual connection. And that is because when they're eating, they are getting tryptophan, and then this because they also eat rice pudding, and the tryptophan goes to serotonin. And since monoamine oxidase is inhibited, the serotonin stays in the brain for much longer time than it should otherwise. Now, as you know, many antidepressants increase serotonin in the brain, and that is the way they alleviate depression. So basically, there are two aspects of it. Now, one thing is, from scientific point of view, if you fast all day or if you fast for several days, then you have food, which is a refeeding syndrome. You will have this serotonin in the brain, and the effect usually lasts for 10 minutes to 1 hour. What happened in Buddha's enlightenment, that experience lasted for 9 hours. And that is my rebuttal with this author is like, if it is purely a refeeding syndrome that the serotonin increases in the brain is because of that, enlightenment is a cause and effect that it cannot last for 9 hours. So there are two explanations. Buddha didn't have this experience for 9 hours. His disciples are not telling the truth, or serotonin syndrome do not explain the entire phenomenon. There is something divine about it, which we cannot understand from our current knowledge of science.
Well, and two, if it was as simple as just fasting and then eating rice pudding, everyone would be walking around enlightened, I'd imagine, at that point. So, yeah.
I can tell from my experience that my mother, for example, when she fasts all day, I was a little child, and she has a rice pudding, she's in a good mood, and she never screams at me. So I know that she feels good, and I ask her, so... But no, then everybody should be enlightened. You and I could be enlightened. I don't know. You may be enlightened. I'm not.
I'm definitely not. So let's shift a little bit over to meditation. You mentioned cortisol levels and GABA, and maybe that's kind of already the answer to this question. But what does the research show in terms of specifically with cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone, and the effects of meditation on our cortisol?
There are plenty of papers published both in US, Europe, and India. All shows that meditation is a great stress buster. So basically, all the studies shows that even 15 to 20 minute meditation can lower the concentration of cortisol in the saliva. Now, many people measure cortisol in the saliva because when you are drawing blood, putting a needle, it might increase some stress. But saliva is non-invasive, and this is not going to increase the stress. So salivary cortisol and a significant decrease like 30%, 40% gives a scientifically valid proof that meditation itself can reduce stress significantly. There are plenty of studies which shows that people who meditate on a regular basis do not have cardiovascular disease. And cardiovascular disease is one of the disease which is due to stress. So there are scientific research showing that people who does meditation, they have lesser burden of disease. And it is also told in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, the ancient text on yoga and meditation, that if you meditate on a regular basis, you will live longer and mostly free from disease. And I believe the long-term benefit of meditation, that it reduces the disease burden, is because it's a stress buster.
I've always been interested in binaural beats and brain waves and things like that. What do studies show in regards to brain waves in meditation?
Well, there are two different kind of things. Like, for example, as you know, you meditate, that is very difficult to get the mind completely free from external thoughts. So what we can do is basically calm down the brain. But there are studies with Buddhist monks who are very good meditator because they have done it 15, 20 years. They also have theta wave, which is a very slow brain wave. And there are plenty of studies which shows that when those Buddhist monks are meditating and they look into the electrical wave of the brain called EEG, they see predominantly theta wave. And there are speculation that for most of us, getting that state of deep relaxation is very difficult. And there is a Indian physician, and you are familiar with Deepak Chopra, that when you can get that level of calmness in your brain, you do get connected with the divine. And I do not know any scientific proof which shows directly that you can become psychic or not. But one thing which is known, and I discuss it in the book later, that near-death experience is now a valid scientific proof. We do not know how does it happen, but at least I know a friend of mine who has a near-death experience when she was 16 years old because she was drowned. And she's very psychic. And she says that she got this thing when she crossed over, and she has no fear of death. And I know her for 25 years. Her prediction came true, and I study astrology. And I know that based on astrological chart, you cannot be that specific. So there must be something there which we don't know, because just think about our vision is so limited. We can see from 400 to 800 nanometer. We don't see infrared. Our dogs can. So science is outstanding. I do science for my living, but I also know that science has limitation.
Well, let's go on that for a moment, because you actually talk about this a little bit in your book. What's your opinion on medical miracles? Things that, again, we can't yet scientifically describe, but happen, and we can't really place it. It's kind of frustrating for the Western rational scientific mind, like, why can't we show this? But what's your opinion on all that?
Well, I was a skeptic because I practice meditation and yoga for stress release, to be honest with you. And as I say, I'm not enlightened. I do not pray on a regular basis because I figured out all I can do is do my work, and praying to God so that I can get a promotion, or praying to God so I might win some lottery, is ridiculous. Because I'm so fortunate that I can drive a car, I have a good job, I have a good spouse, and I'm so fortunate that I'm not standing in a street corner in Houston heat and asking for money. I'm a very fortunate person. So I feel this would be ridiculous for me to beg to God for more, because I have plenty. So in 2011, I got a call from my cousin that my mother is dying, and she had a massive convulsion, and she was put on life support. And I called a senior physician in India. I know him, Dr. Chaudhary. And I told him, please help my mother. This is the hospital. She has been admitted. This is the name of the attending physician. And I will fly immediately. So he says, give me about half an hour. Let me talk to the physician, and then I'll let you know if this is necessary. He called me after half an hour. He says, Amitava, get ready. I think your mother is ready to cross over. So come right now. So I took the next flight. I went to India. I go straight to the ICU at midnight. I had the permission. It's a gone case, multi-organ failure. I looked at her medical record. Next morning, I met the medical team, and they said, I'm sorry, there's nothing you can do. We can keep her alive artificially for a few days, but medically she cannot revive. So I called my wife because she loves my mother. She's a Christian. So she flew immediately. It took her day and a half. And then she has a prayer book because she's very spiritual and she believes in Jesus. So she prayed for half an hour, and I see for the first time my mother opened her eyes. And the resident physician came and checked her out. Her pain reflex is back. So we are supposed to discontinue the life support in the morning because the whole idea is for my wife to see my mother alive. So we decided not to discontinue the life support. And I cannot believe it medically. Her creatinine is a marker for kidney failure. It was 6.5 milligram per deciliter, which means it's pretty high. Next morning, it went down to 1.2 milligram per deciliter, which is normal. I am practicing clinical chemistry toxicology for last 25 years. I've not seen it. So next morning, the attending physician came and he says, I don't understand, but looks like she might make it. So I asked Dr. Chaudhary, who was ex-dean of Calcutta Medical College, a very reputed medical school in India. He came and he didn't believe it either. But the truth is my mother survived full time. And Dr. Chaudhary later told me that he has seen one other case in his whole life, that a Buddhist monk came back from death to make the selection who will be the next head monk, and then died in 2 weeks. So that miracle I have seen in my own eyes makes me very religious. I was spiritual before because it's the first time I see that a higher power intervened to save my mother's life. She's still alive. I lost my father in 2011. This happened in 2011. And I think God gave her permission to come back to hold my dad's hand when he crossed over. And I'm going to see her in Christmas. And any readers is interested, any of your followers is interested, I'll give you the name of the doctor who treated my mother, my mother's telephone number. There are plenty of witnesses. This is not I'm making it up to sell my book. It's a miracle.
Well, and so what have you noticed in terms of, because you've also did plenty of research on, or looking at the research that's been done on prayer. What did you find with your research on prayer?
This is what I found. It is a very confusing literature reference. Like when you talk about yoga and meditation, it's very clear. There are plenty of health benefits, mental health benefits and physical health benefits. Prayer sometimes work. Prayer sometimes don't work. And that makes sense because if you believe there is a higher power, and it's like my boss, like 6 people go and say, oh, Dr. Hunter, I want a salary increase. He might give a salary increase to 2 people. He may say no to 3 other people. So when you are petitioning to somebody who is higher power, how this higher power is going to act, we can't predict. But one thing my meditation teacher told me in India, that when you pray for yourself, it doesn't work. When you pray for others, you are totally selfless, it works. And the reason I think Alice's prayer works, my wife's prayer, because she loves my dad very much. And she's basically saying that, is it possible for my mother-in-law to come back to life so that she can hold my father-in-law who is in a very bad health to cross over? And the study says the intercessory prayer, where somebody is praying for somebody where there is no direct connection, is more effective. And I give a simple example. I have a very close friend from Pakistan, and he lost his job. So I felt very bad. So I prayed for him. And he's highly qualified. He also went to Stanford. So maybe it was just coincidence, but he did get a job within 2 weeks. Now, whether it's a prayer or whether it's a CV, I don't know. But the thing is, the good thing is, what you have to lose to pray. If there is a hopeless situation, somebody's dying, you are in a hopeless situation that you lost a job and you are looking desperately for a job. If you believe in God, if you're an atheist, that's a whole different ballgame. I'm not saying that you should become a God-believing person. But if you believe in a higher power, what you have to lose to pray, right?
Absolutely. I think it's what there's that joke out there, and I don't really remember it, so it's not even going to make sense. But where everybody in the foxhole starts praying to God. Doesn't matter what their religious background is. When you're in that place, it's like, hey, what harm could it do? Because if it's right, then great. If it's not, it's the outcome that's expected. So
yeah, exactly. It's not going to hurt you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt you.
So with all the research that you've done into all this different research with yoga and meditation and prayer, if you could encourage our listeners or just people as a whole, if they only had time, let's say a half hour a day, what would you think would be the most useful way to utilize that time just for overall health benefits? I mean, we can kind of keep aside conversations of miracles and spiritual enlightenment and just kind of the overall health benefits. Should they be splitting it between meditation and some physical asanas, just do yoga asanas, just do meditation? What's your opinion based on the research that you found, or is it very highly specific to a person based on what their needs are?
It depends on the person and the need. If the person is young and in good health, I would suggest 15 minutes of yoga in the morning, followed by meditation. The reason I suggest that let's do the yoga first, then meditation, because meditation is going to calm your mind. Then you don't want to get involved in physical posturing. After meditation, you might just relax, take a break, and go to work. So if somebody is, or another thing is maybe practice yoga in the morning. I try yoga in the morning because I make the yoga, I'm in a rush, take a shower, go to work. And in the evening between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, I have a room upstairs, which is a quiet room. I listen to Sanskrit chanting. Sometimes I chant by myself. And I try to meditate. And I try to forget everything happened in the day, good or bad. I just simply says, I acknowledge that I'm alive. I am existing at this point, and I love everybody around me because I think we are all connected. And I want this moment of solitude to feel that I have a special place in the universe. I matter.
I love that. I think that's something simple enough for everyone to do. Your book really brings together and explains a lot of the research that's been done out there in this field of meditation, yoga, prayer. What is your research? Or do you also research in this field, or is that kind of a separate thing? Because I mean, you have your Ph.D. in chemistry. Are you studying some of this stuff with your own research?
No, actually, what I presented in the book is the research done by other people. The only reason is that when you are doing your scientific research and you are funding, it has to be very specific, which is within my field, okay? And but I have connection with several people who are in complementary and alternative medicine field of research. So what I do, I sometimes participate in the study design, giving the advice at what biochemical parameters you can make. But unfortunately, University of Texas doesn't have a research group who are interested in complementary and alternative medicine. So my own research interest is totally hardcore science, which is we try to understand the genetic basis that why one drug is toxic to a person, why other drug is not toxic to a person, what are the metabolism, what will be the right drug for a person, and the focus is critically ill patient who are treated with different drugs, and what will be the right choice before you start taking any drugs. So that's my research. But since I practice meditation and yoga from childhood, I'm 58, I started it when I was 10, I have seen benefits in myself. It makes me a better person. It makes me a calmer person. I deal with my frustration far better than other people because I don't get upset. I say it's a learning experience. And basically, I wrote the book after my mother's near-death experience. And she came back from death. I saw this effect of prayer and miracle. And that kind of stimulated me that I need to give this information to people and write a complete book covering this entire field of yoga, meditation, prayer, and miracle. But I would say, though, if my mother did not came back from death, if that miracle did not happen in 2011, I probably wouldn't write this book.
Well, then I guess we have in some way your mother to thank for helping make this book happen, because like I said, it does a really great job of bringing together and explaining a lot of the research that I'm sure if someone like myself were to actually be reading a lot of those medical research papers, I would just be like, I don't even understand what they're saying because it's very technical language. So the way that you present it is much more accessible, and that's very much appreciated.
Yes, that's my first book trying to go in the field of spirituality, because if you look in the Amazon, my other books, those are purely scientific, like personalized medicine.
Mm-hmm. So this book, The Science of Meditation, Yoga, and Prayer, comes out January 1st in 2017. Where else can people find out about you, this book, and the work that you're doing?
Well, I love people call me because I have another book which is called Science of Drinking, which is totally different. That's my research interest because I'm a toxicologist and I talk about how much you should drink, what are the ill effects and other things. And I have my email address there. So I get call from my readers. You can freely give my telephone number and email address, because I did not write this book to make money. I wrote this book to reach the people.
Well, that's wonderful. We'll be sure to at the very least include your email in the show notes. I don't know if you want to give out phone numbers to people yet.
Any conversation with me is free, because I want to reach to people saying
wonderful.
There are tremendous benefit of yoga and meditation. I'm going to a meditation class on next Thursday with one of my colleagues. I convinced her that it's something you should try.
Awesome.
So we tried last week. She liked it. She says, I'll go again. I said, let's go.
Wonderful. Well, again, already spreading the love of meditation. That's wonderful. So, Dr. Dasgupta, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for telling us your stories and also explaining some of the research that you've come across in your book. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed hearing about this stuff, and I hope that they get your book so they can dive a little deeper into the research and find out more about all these amazing effects. 'Cause you actually do separate things in terms of the research on cardiovascular disease on one side, stress on the other side. I mean, you break them down quite clearly throughout the book as well. So if people have specific questions about how does yoga affect this or that, it is explained separately in different areas and sections of the book. So that's great.
Thank you for interviewing me. This is a great honor that you want to talk to me. And this book will be published on January 1st, but it will also be published in the Kindle and Nook edition. So the people who are more tech savvy, don't like to buy a hardcover, they can get the book on their device.
Wonderful. And will the release date for that one be the same as well?
Yes, I think the price will be a little lower. I mean, you can talk to the Blue River Press, and I do not know what will be the price of the Kindle edition, but it should be lower than $16.95. And tell your readers to reach me out. I can convince them why they should do yoga and meditation.
Wonderful. Well, as I said, we'll have your email address in the show notes for everybody. So if anybody wants to reach out to Dr. Dasgupta, they can do that and continue the conversation and learn more. So thank you so much again, Amitava, for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed. I know that I've enjoyed, and I hope everyone has a very present moment. Thanks for listening. Namaste. Hey everybody, it's Ashton here with an announcement. We're starting a weekly contest giveaway over at Savannah Spirit. If you'd like to enter into the contest to win one of our weekly prizes, go to savannahspirit.com/contest. If you enjoyed listening to the podcast today, we'd really appreciate it if you went over to iTunes, left us a review, leave us some comments, and share this podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Also want to invite you to go check out Savannah East, which is the name of our blog and also the name of a Facebook group where I interact with guests and our audience. We'll post recent episodes up there as well as interesting articles relating to our guests and or the topics on the shows. Again, thank you so much for listening. Namaste.
You've been listening to the Savannah Podcast. To find out more about Savannah, go to savannahspirit.com or follow Savannah on Facebook at facebook.com/Savannah Spirit. For daily inspiration, check out our blog at savannaheast.com. Be sure to join us next week for a new episode, and thank you for listening to the Savannah Podcast.